Hello and welcome to my woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog all about what I'm learning and making in my PhD about wool in anthropology in Iceland. And this week I wanted to talk about landscape. And I'm trying to do the video with what is one of the most beautiful landscapes behind me, but you can't see it actually. But I mean, even you can see it, but you can't really see it. There's actually this amazing kind of range of mountains behind me on the horizon, which, you know, we see kind of out of the kitchen window of the house that I live in. It's very beautiful, very lucky. And it's really nice today, but can't see it. Anyway, I tried. And I'm out in the middle of a field. It's a bit windy. It's quite cold. I feel well prepared, but let's see how we go. So yeah, in Iceland, I mean, whether you're a local, a tourist, PhD student, or like anyone else, I think we're all thinking about landscape in one way or another, like a lot. And for me, I'm sometimes actively thinking about it. Other times I'm admiring it. Other times I'm just kind of like awestruck by it. And most of the time I'm just kind of moving through it without directly thinking about it. But I think we're always calculating landscape, like we're always including it somehow as we get about our lives. Even when we're not, well, often when we're still not that conscious of it, right? Our attention is somewhere else. And while I said, you know, in Iceland, but the landscapes here are particularly stunning. But this is not just Iceland, right? Everywhere we are constantly in landscape. Now, anthropologists love to think about landscape. Traditionally, landscapes were only sort of engaged as a sort of a backdrop to human cultural lives. Basically, everything that wasn't human was also sort of backdrop. The bit player roles, not so central. But these days, anthropology thinks with landscapes in many interesting ways. You know, how does it shape our lives? How do we exist in it? How do we shape landscape? What's the nature of our relationship with landscape? Who are the different actors or things that mediate our relationship with landscape? Like I was chatting to a local academic here last week, and they mentioned how much Icelanders' knowledge of the landscape has come through their relationship with sheep, which is, of course, very interesting to me and my topic. Now, I know, I'm just getting very uncomfortable. The ground's quite wet and cold. I've got waterproof pants on, but okay. Sorry about the light. I see this is a really dark video, but we will all just have to struggle on. Now, I know I sometimes try to give definitions of a term in these videos, but I'm not going to do that with landscapes because I think just in this occasion just collapses it way too much because there's so many ways in which landscapes can be experienced and thought about. So I'm going to go through a few of these. So firstly, say broadly as a cultural construct, right? It's not a neutral physical terrain that's just there because of nature. Landscape can be understood as something perceived and interpreted through cultural lenses. Different societies or cultures see the same environment in very different ways, depending on their history, their values, their cosmology. And Tim Ingold also would write a lot about how landscape isn't something we look at, it's something we live in. It's inseparable from our kind of dwelling and our sort of practice of life. And I also think, well, actually, I'm skipping ahead. And Tim Ingold also, you know, who is a theorist or an anthropologist whose work I read a bit, he talked about the concept of taskscape. Now, I don't think he's that into it anymore, but it was interesting when he sort of talked about understanding landscape through the rhythms of our everyday activity, that places sort of acquire meaning through our repeated practical engagements. You know, that's very, very evident in farming where life is both very structured and unpredictable at the same time. And also the sort of landscape thus becomes like a record of past and ongoing tasks. It's not a sort of static container. In other ways, it's sort of as a phenomenological space, and this is a theorist introduced phenomenology as we kind of use it today, Merleau-Ponty, probably not saying his name right, but seeing landscape as something we experience through the body. So movement, perception, sensory engagements, shaping how we relate to place, And it sort of really emphasises landscape. We often think about it as something we look at, but that it's not just visual, it's also heard, it's smelt, it's walked, it's felt. And it's, I don't know if this covers it too, right? But it's also a place that we move through in different ways, and we come to know our own bodies through in different ways as well. Like, I remember when I first got here, trying to learn to walk on the fields where the pigs were living, because they have these really interesting tussock grass formations that are partly because of freezing and thawing cycles. And so they're these kind of quite large mounds that you can kind of hop across, and then these big kind of gullies between them. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to break an ankle. I'm sure I talked about this in a previous video. And then watching the farmer who grew up here, just like straight through it, no problem. And then I was watching, there's a young child around here, 2 or something, and watching them navigating this landscape again the other week and just going, oh, this is where it starts, this learning. And, they're watching the ground really closely and having fun and whatever, but really, like, it was, for someone with such short legs, it's not so coordinated yet. It was really interesting. So this is another, this phenomenological way of understanding, thinking about landscape is how we experience it through the whole of our bodies. Also, that landscapes are social and political arenas, right? Landscape encodes power relations, social memory, identity, who names places, who controls land, whose histories are inscribed in the terrain. Even just what is there. Is it farmland? Are there trees? Are there fences? Who's allowed to live there in terms of people and animals, wild animals, domesticated animals? All of these are political, right? And also when we come into very, very specific and clear examples like contested landscape, where there's conflicts over land use for wildlife or versus farming, also around Indigenous sites, lands as well, and dispossession, are all ways in which kind of landscape is part of and deeply politicised. Also as a mnemonic device, so some anthropologists study how landscape serves as like a repository for collective memory. Let's say, so there's the place names, the myths, the oral traditions that sort of anchor historical and ancestral knowledge to specific sort of geographical features. I remember up in the Highlands last year on the sheep gathering, somebody saying to me, oh yeah, this rock is called, whatever it's called, I don't remember. I think I've got it written down somewhere. When we get to this rock, because they're kind of walking through the landscape, we're allowed to stop and have a drink. Right, so it's, there's one example. They're not drunk through the whole thing. It's kind of cute. But Australian Aboriginal songlines are another kind of, like I say, paradigmatic example, like a really clear example of this. This way in which the landscape is named and remembered, and stories about how to be there and who the ancestors are, how respect and relationships need to sort of exist all through this kind of naming of the landscape. Also, it's a symbolic and cosmological order is another way that landscapes can get organised according to symbolic principles. So like sacred versus profane, centre versus periphery, high versus low. And the way that different features of the landscape can also be sort of imbued with spiritual significance. They might be inhabited by certain ancestors or spirits. They might have certain kinds of atmosphere or intentions for people, not just human people. And so they're, part of a cosmological kind of worldview. The other one is as a historical palimpsest. I can never say this word because I very rarely use it. A palimpsest. Who came up with this? It was naughty. Traditionally it's a manuscript page, right? That's been erased and then written over again multiple times. And this is like when they were using sort of parchment or vellum, so skin. And reused, where you can see traces of the original, right? So it also the idea of the palimpsest becomes a metaphor for layering And so anthropologists, especially those who are kind of more in the historical and archaeological thing, understand landscape as being layered, that there's these accumulated traces of human activity over time, each generation sort of inheriting and modifying the landscape, making this palimpsest kind of layering thing where you can see, what's written now, and you can see traces of what was written before. And lastly, it's not the only one. This is not a comprehensive list, but also it's a representation and a form of text, right? So we can treat landscape as a text or an image, something that is kind of produced and read. So we can explore how landscapes are represented in ways that naturalise social hierarchies and the ways in which a landscape is used to communicate and reinforce or reproduce or to challenge so different kinds of social order. The ways in which they can make visible or invisible power dynamics. Yes. So in my research, I'm often trying to think about what the place I'm moving around in prompts within me. So in terms of my thoughts and my experiences, the camera's about to blow over. And so just how that sort of the landscape is kind of under my feet is a thinking partner as well. And I think this connects with Ingold's sort of notions of dwelling as well, right? It's like how it's not Liz inhabiting this place, but kind of a shared habitation where the boundaries of person and landscape they're not so clearly defined. Anyway, I find it both a very tangible and abstract concept, because there's so many different ways to conceptualize and think about it, while also trying to observe how does my research population think about it, move through it, not just the people, but I also watch how do the sheep walk, how do the pigs walk on the land, how do they use it, rest on it, where do they move to, how are they relating with fencing and other kinds of boundaries or obstacles in the landscape. Anyway, I also wanted to give you a little update of what's happening in this landscape at this time of year. So the birds returned a couple of weeks ago. I was up early in the morning on my computer and I heard a bird outside and I was like, what? And then I thought, I haven't heard any birds since I arrived. I haven't seen any at all, right? Of course, they'd all gone somewhere warmer for winter. Very clever. So anyway, they're coming back from wherever they went. Apparently they're a little bit late. That's curious. And maybe the grass is taking a little longer to get greener. This is just sort of what I'm told, because of course I haven't been here before at this time of year. Nor the many years you would need to be here to sort of have an observation like that. But anyway, I've seen geese. There's lots of geese. Geese are a bit of a problem for farmers here. I think I mentioned this already. Maybe not. Also pied oyster catchers, which we have at home, which is very cool. I've seen them in Scotland as well. There's also common snipes, little brown birds with long, thin noses. I think there's something else that's come back as well, but I don't know what it's called, and I've only seen it from a long way away. Anyway, that's exciting. We've also had the first lambs of the season. They're a little early, but the farmers here, they were all ready. They had all their kind of lambing things set up. So that was good. Mum and babies are doing very well. I got to hold one. It was very cute. Also, the other thing that's really startling to me is, of course, the daylight hours are increasing now, or minutes, but it's really quick. Like, I don't think it was quick just when I got here. And I think, no, that's not true. Yeah. And I looked it up. About 5 to 7 minutes every day of extra daylight. It's really fast. And apparently it really accelerates kind of March, April. Anyway, it's quite wild. I don't think I've been in a place where I've experienced this before. Like, it happens in Melbourne, of course, but not anywhere near as dramatically. Anyway, what have I been making this week? Oh my God, this is my balaclava beanie. So, last week I had finished a senior cardigan by Anna Sjosvard. I just had to block it to check the size and then do the button band. So I blocked it, checked the size, worked out how I was going to do the button band. I wanted to add on an extra inch on either side for sizing. So I finished the button band today. Fits great. I'm really happy with it, but it's blocking for a second time so that the band fabric kind of can do its thing, because this makes a big difference with this wool. All that to say, I can't show it to you because it's too wet. Maybe next week. I have been button hunting. This will be the last thing, with no luck. They do really cool reindeer horn. Is it reindeer or just deer? I think it's reindeer. Reindeer horn buttons. And I thought that'll be the thing. But I couldn't find ones that worked. And then I looked at the fish skin buttons that they have here, which are also very cool. And they're also not right for the job. So I'm going to keep hunting, but I'm a bit disappointed because they're really special buttons that would have been, it's a special project. So it's sad. I have been working on the swatch, but I haven't made a lot of progress. But I did bring it out into this field to show you. This is my basket of colours that I'm working with. It's quite nice. I enjoy the little basket layout. And I did go and, you remember if you watched last week, the whole Jamaican flag drama. So I took this to the mill shop and tried every other colour that they had with this to find some kind of colour pop, and I ended up kind of picking these two, which are still greens, but they're not Jamaica flag green. So, but I think this one's going to be the go. And I just did a round of sort of all the colours, and then I have done little bits of rounds trying to include the new greens. It's the pale one. Pale one's no good. It's too pale. This darker kind of grey green. That's going to be really nice. Anyway, I've picked out some patterns to swatch in this, and I'm going to get organised on that. Oh my God, my nose is running. It's so cold. Lucky, it's time to stop. Okay. Yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Oh, and I don't know if you've got any reflections on landscapes and being in landscapes, pop them in the comments. I'd love to think about it together, because I think it's a very, as I said before, very tangible and abstract thing, which also makes me think a lot about, like, you know, I was talking anthropologically before, but I think about the subjective personal experience, which of course is very cultural too. Okay, that's opened up a whole new area of thinking that I was not prepared for, and it's too cold. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.